Welcome to NFL Live. We got a fun hour ahead. We've got our wide receiver and defensive back ready to break down Xavier Worthy's playoff success so far. Plus, we'll hear from Dak Prescott on his new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. The hire might be a shot in the dark to some, but Dak is on board. And we have the latest on a possible Shedeur Sanders landing spot in the draft. Here what the Browns said, Adam Schefter with the news you need to know. That is next, as we will get to Hawk and Jason McCourty in a matter of minutes. Let's bring in Adam Schefter, as we got 7 head coach openings this offseason. Only 1 remains, Shefty. What's the latest on the Saints' plans?
Well, Kevin, stop me when you've heard this before as an Eagles fan. The Eagles are in a city, and that host city has an opening at head coach the way it did in Arizona when the Cardinals wound up hiring Jonathan Gannon. Well, now the Eagles are going to New Orleans, and the Saints have a head coach opening, and they look like they're targeting Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore is the guy. Now, the Saints have had issues with the league before. They're not going to do anything to try to go around the rules. And we saw what happened when the Cardinals had conversations that the league went after the Cardinals about, and they wound up docking them, disciplining them. And so between those 2 examples, I think the Saints are going to be models of behavior and do everything the right way, which means they couldn't do a deal with Kellen Moore until after the Super Bowl. And we don't know what could change between then and now. But today, it looks like it is tracking for Kellen Moore to become the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. There's a lot of time between now and the game, but it is setting up for the Eagles to potentially lose another coordinator to another host Super Bowl city that has another head coach opening once the Eagles play in this game.
Okay, we'll see if it's the same results, though, that as we saw 2 years ago in Phoenix with the Eagles losing out and, of course, the defense playing a big role in falling apart against the Chiefs in that final quarter. Back here, as I mentioned, we got Hawk, we got Jason McCourty here with us as well. The Saints cap situation is dreadful. How about this? Over $70 million right now over the cap with uncertainty at quarterback. What do you make of how they've been approaching this coaching search?
Well, the tough thing, you look at it, the Saints were the second team to fire their coach. Robert Saleh was the first one to go for the Jets. This is all the way back in November, and this process for them started out with names like Aaron Glenn of he may be the potential guy. He didn't take the second interview. Joe Brady then follows suit. He doesn't. Cliff Kingsbury declines there. So now you're to the point where it's just like, well, then who's left? Who are the coaches that we can even hire? Darren Rizzi stepped in as an interim, did an admirable job, and now we're looking at Kellen Moore. So if you're a Saints player and you're on that roster, you just mentioned the dead cap space. You don't have room to go out and get all of these guys. You're hoping that a guy like Kellen Moore can come in and say, Coach, can you put up 30 points a game? If I'm on that defense, we're going to need points. And to your point, what you just said, since Drew Brees left, it's been 8 different starting quarterbacks under center. So it's in disarray to a certain extent. And the organization right now, how do they win in that division?
Well, I'm looking at the situation. Everything you said is spot on, J-Mac. Like you're backed into a situation, and they're at a point now where kind of beggars can't be choosers. So all signs do point to Kellen Moore. Now, that being said, his offense has done well this year, right? And more importantly than how the offense is operated is his ability to adapt. There were points during the season for the Eagles offense where there were questions. There were questions about how they figure out the pass game, the run game, were they running the ball enough? And there were questions around Kellen Moore as a play caller over the years about how he's executed his run game. He has figured that out in an incredible fashion, so much so he's in the Super Bowl. There is hope, though, for the Saints brats, because if you remember last year, the Commanders were in a very similar situation. They got Dan Quinn last because that was all that was left, and it was hard to find hope around that. You look at them 1 year later, they're in the NFC Championship game.
The Saints don't have Jayden Daniels
Hey,
coming in.
they
don't got the second pick of the draft.
That plays a role here, right? But to your point, Kellen Moore has adjusted to the talent on the team, the way the play calling. He was masterful against the Commanders. Let's go to the Commanders team and talk about them. They made that NFC Championship game behind an offense that saw 50% of its offensive drives result in points during the regular season, second highest rate in the league. Jayden Daniels, of course, had an outstanding year one, finishing with the third highest total QBR by a rookie quarterback since ESPN began tracking in 2006 after Dak Prescott in 2016 and Russell Wilson in 2012. Now, again, Jayden Daniels' rookie season, it outshines C.J. Stroud from a year ago, right? And number 2 guy, right? One of the things that we noticed, though, there was a connection with Bobby Slowick, with C.J. Stroud. Slowick decided, I'm going to run it back in my sophomore year, and now he's out of a job. What do you think and what do you make of Cliff Kingsbury deciding to run it back and say, you know what, I'm going to hold off on taking a head coach opportunity?
I feel like it's a little bit different of a situation because Cliff Kingsbury has had head coaching experiences, right? And say what you want about how it went with the Arizona Cardinals. I'm sure Cliff is very pointed about what he expects from the next situation and learning from those mistakes. He has a quarterback that we all can agree is the future of the NFL. And not only that, he operates the offense that Cliff wants at a very high level. If I'm Cliff Kingsbury going into this offseason, what you have to fight against is your own tendencies, because it's not just a sophomore slump for Jayden. It will be the offense as well, because they're going to study Jayden. They're going to say, what does he like to do? What makes him comfortable? What kind of plays does Cliff like to call for Jayden in certain situations? And it's going to be harder in year 2. It always is, because that's what the NFL is about.
I love what you said about tendencies, because as an offensive play caller, and those guys on that side of the ball, when things work, we say it all the time, keep running them. Don't try to change it up. But you give defenses a full 17 games, and then you include the playoffs in there. Well, now we can dissect who Jayden Daniels is and who Cliff Kingsbury is as an offensive coordinator with him under center. Going into this first season, you have no idea what you're going to get, how much QB run versus moving the pocket, all of these different things. And then you end up getting all the 4-by-1 formations, 2 running backs out there, and everything that Cliff Kingsbury threw at them. Now going into this season, you have to have the answers to the test when you show up. If you're Cliff Kingsbury, you're studying your own offense all offseason and say, hey, what are defense going to do? What things worked against us that we can prepare and get ready for going into the season and having those answers for Jayden Daniels?
Daniels and company got Washington to its first conference championship appearance since 1991. Let's go to a franchise that just says, hey, every single year we'll meet you there in the conference championship, and that is the Chiefs. And that defense has been fantastic during this run. They continue to get better under Steve Spagnuolo. He's been in his bag when we talk about big moments and blitzing at the right time. That will certainly play a role in New Orleans against the Eagles defense. The KCD locked up the AFC Championship behind that exotic DB blitz on that Bills 4th and 5 after the 2-minute warning. It's a big part of what the Chiefs do, as Spags has dialed up D-back blitzes at the second highest rate in the NFL this season, with both the most sacks and QB pressures on those plays. That includes 11 quarterback pressures this postseason using a DB in the pass rush, and I'm sure that makes you smile.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you got the green light to get in the backfield?
We saw, and it's not only getting the backfield, Spags, you got to draw it up clean so nobody touches me.
Yes.
As a DB coming through, if a lineman slides to me, if Deion Dawkins is sliding to me, I'm coming, and right away when he gets there, I'm just stopping my tracks. I'm just looking at the quarterback. I'm going to jump, because I'm not running into no 300-pounder. So that's what Spags does such a good job of. He designs it for unblocked defenders. But I think outside of just the blitzes, it's the communication of this defense and their ability to solve any issue. Right here, we have the Buffalo Bills coming out in the 4-by-1 set that Orlovsky details all the time. Right away to save